Awesome.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name's Ashley Foreman, and my co-chair, Barry Levinson, and I will be presenting to you today from the Sierra Club Toyabe Chapter's Legislative Committee. We want to talk with you all about our 2023 policy proposals. So a little bit about the Sierra Club. Our mission at the Sierra Club is to protect, explore, and enjoy our planet. And to do that, we take local environmental action. We're hard at work at the Toyabe chapter protecting public lands and wildlife and our scarce waters in Nevada. We work hard to elect and encourage environmental champions at all levels of government. We advocate for smart growth, smart transportation, and then we also recruit, train, and empower volunteer activists like Barry and myself. So in the past, our legislative committee has taken a more reactive strategy during the legislative session by kind of tracking and assessing and responding to bills, providing public comment and testimony. But this is our first interim legislative session, really taking the reins and trying to produce some policy proposals to introduce to legislators. So that's super exciting. And some of the proposals that we will share with you today are more of a long-term effort, and we recognize that these are going to take 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 years to accomplish. And then some are short-term, which we hope to get introduced this legislative session for 2023. So thank you for being here with us, and thank you for being willing to share your knowledge and expertise with us, because this is something that is a totally new process for us, and we are learning as we go. So we appreciate your support and knowledge. Our goals for today are to, like I said, gain some feedback, some insight, and ways to improve our ideas for our 2023 legislative proposals, to also form some partnerships and relationships with PSN members. And then just a reminder to wait till the end of the presentation to ask questions. We'll have a whole time for discussions at the end of the presentation. And with that, I'll hand it off to Barry to get us started on community solar.
All right. Thanks, Ashley. So we're going to go through, these are not all of our proposals that we've come up with. We've been working for about 7 months on ideas for legislation that we'd like to see passed. And we have, for today's presentation, really cut these down to ones that we think that PSN can really be most interested in and be most helpful for. So we have other ideas too, but these are the ones we think are appropriate for the PSN group. So start with community solar. This is sort of my pet idea here. Not just mine, but this is mine that I think is most important. So just to start with the definition of what is community solar. So it is a program that enables subscribers to receive credits on their electricity bill for part of the energy output of a local solar panel array. So that's a mouthful. Basically, a entity such as either NV Energy, an IOU like NV Energy, or a municipality, or a third-party private company would set up a solar array and then sell subscriptions to that solar array to people that would like to use their solar energy from that array. And generally, in most states, it's set up so that there's a discount relative to the IOU rate. So it's actually cheaper to do it this way than to get electricity from your typical IOU energy supplier. So the solar arrays are built and maintained by either the investor-owned utility, that's the IOU, a municipality, or a third-party supplier, which is like a private company that would set them up. In Nevada, there are a few municipalities that do offer community solar in the rural areas, but not in Washoe or Clark counties. And also, NV Energy does have 3 solar arrays that are planned. And let me back up a second and say that we do have a community solar bill that was passed in 2019, but it got morphed into NV Energy supplying these three setups. So we really want to see third parties be able to set them up to compete with NV Energy. So anyway, there are three set up right now in the state. There's currently no legal way for a third party to provide community solar in Nevada. And NV Energy controls these three community solar sites in Nevada, like I said. I see somebody has their hand up. Can somebody look and see what the question is there?
Yeah, Lina, do you want to go ahead and unmute?
Sure, if it's appropriate to ask a question in the middle of the presentation.
We kind of wanted to wait till the end so we don't get off sidetrack. We want to get through the whole thing. So I think we want to say what question, unless you can't see the screen or something. Okay, let's.
Nope, I'll wait. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right. And so not everybody's able to go solar. If you want to have solar energy, you know, you could put solar on your roof, but not everybody can do that. So there's people who rent, there's people who have limited credit or don't have the financial capacity to do it. Some rooftops are not amenable to putting solar on. The roof's no good, or it's not facing the right direction. And community solar is a great tool to increase the uptake of solar in these communities. Next slide, Ashley. Okay, there we go. Great. And so the overall benefits, it enables people that can't access rooftop solar to access rooftop solar. It reduces energy burden of low income people because their prices will be lower generally. It's going to have savings on your electricity compared to your investor-owned utility electricity. It reduces use of the grid. This is interesting because the power source is closer to the end user. So the lines that are being used are less generally because the panels are close to the user. And of course, you have reduced pollution from fossil fuel power plants. And also can add good paying jobs for setting these things up. It can increase grid resilience, obviously reduce pollution, and opportunity for low income families to benefit from solar. So that's the main reasons that I'd like to see a community solar bill passed. Okay, next slide. All right, moving on to a completely different subject. The rest of the stuff we're going to talk about is mostly going to be about our zero waste initiatives. So the first thing we're talking about here is composting. So as you might know, there's no state law right now requiring any composting in Nevada. So if an individual or business wants to compost their leftover food, they either need to pay an outside service like I do with Down to Earth, or they have to compost themselves on their own property. There's a big disincentive to compost as it can be costly in the case of paying an outside service, or a lot of work and smelly to do it yourself. Many residents of Nevada don't have the means, time, energy, or know how to do composting. The problem of food waste is huge. So the most recent data I could find doing some research in 2018, Nevada wasted about 25,000 tons of food. This creates 2,032 tons of methane gas, which is equivalent to 34,000 cars per year, the output from 34,000 cars. So if we could get rid of that food waste, if we could compost it, we'd get rid of the equivalent of 34,000 cars per year on the road. So the proposal is to mandate some amount of composting in each municipality. To say you got to compost some amount of your food waste. Or alternatively, Nevada can institute a mandated solid waste diversion minimum. For example, 25% diversion from the landfill, which had to be diverted to recycling and or composting. And per Cody Witt, which I think a lot of you know, this would provide an incentive to develop composting facilities. And per Cody, we should also mandate a guaranteed market for the compost product for use by cities, NDOT, and developers, so that there's actually a market for the compost that they create to keep them in business. Okay, next slide. All right, and related to that, somehow these are intertwined, composting and reducing landfill. It's either two different bills or we put it together in one bill, but I did it separate for this presentation. So the proposal is to mandate 25% solid waste diversion from landfill with an increasing percentage diversion over time. California did a bill like this, and they pretty much did it too quickly, and they put some of these composters out of business because they couldn't keep up. So I would suggest a slower rate of increase, but at least to start with the mandate of 25% solid waste diversion from the landfill. So most Nevadans are served by two monopoly waste companies. So we've got Waste Management and we've got, what is it called in the South?
Republic Services.
Thank you, Republic Services, yes. And they have a suggested goal of 25% waste diversion, but it's not mandated. There's no data, there's no independent confirmation or repercussions when they fall short of that 25%. And there is no, as we know, no municipal composting in Reno or Las Vegas. Just some information on the harms of food in the landfill. So USA landfills produce the nation's third largest greenhouse gas emissions, which is around 15%. Diverting just 25% of the food waste currently sent to US landfills would reduce greenhouse gas emissions by about 30%. So it's a huge, huge component of reducing greenhouse gas is to try to get stuff out of the landfill. Washoe and Clark counties are behind the country. They're doing worse than the rest of the country. The EPA provides a lot of support. They've got a great website that helps give you ideas of how you could get rid, of your organic waste, eliminate it from going to landfill. And then changing the county contracts with waste monopolies will open the markets to commercial waste processors that target composting rather than landfill. So we could create markets for other companies that would come in and do something, do the diversion that we would like to see. And new facilities and players will be good. I can't read that. Good. Good economic impacts, including jobs. It'll be a good for jobs. Okay, next slide.
All right, I'll take it from here.
There you are. Ashley, back to you.
Thanks, Barry. Okay, so another one of our proposals is to propose an extended producer responsibility program in Nevada. The goal of the program would be to reduce packaging waste at its source, so when it's produced, and before it becomes a burden on consumers in the state. How does this work? So basically with an EPR program, the producer pays a fee on the packaging type and amount used, and then a producer
We can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. And so the producer responsibility organization collects and manages those fees that are collected from the producer. And then those fees are used to invest in reuse and recycling infrastructure, as well as education in the state. Currently, producers don't have any incentive to reduce packaging or to even use more environmentally friendly packaging materials that are often free of like toxic chemicals. And so there's just not much of an incentive to do that right now with an EPR. The fee-based structure of that is the incentive. So the less packaging used, the less fees the producer has to pay based on the amount that they produce. Let's see. And then some of the benefits of an EPR program include reducing the number of landfills and incinerators and the impacts associated with those, reducing the burden on municipalities for the requirements of waste management. It fosters recycling and reuse of products. It reduces and eliminates potentially hazardous chemicals in products, and it promotes a cleaner production of products. All right, next slide. So there's some key principles of good EPR. So those include reduced packaging. So when companies are required to reduce their packaging, they then transition to a more reuse-based structure, and that ensures that their remaining packaging is easily recyclable. Next is to eliminate toxics from packaging. So companies are required to remove toxics from their packaging and use safer alternatives. Banning the burning of plastics. So good EPR prohibits all type of plastic burning, including chemical recycling, advanced recycling, incineration, waste to energy, and other burning of plastics. There's strong oversight and accountability. So the state environmental agency will set the rules and fees of the program, whereas companies don't control the program. And taxpayer relief. So the company pays fees based on how difficult it is to recycle their packaging and whether it contains recycled content. Another proposal that we have is to establish a bottle deposit return program. This is a more short-term proposal, whereas the EPR we see as being a bit more long-term. So with a bottle deposit return program, essentially it requires distributors and retailers to collect a deposit. Usually it's around 5 to 10 cents on certain beverage containers. Many states, I think it's about 10 states in the US, have these programs, in several countries around the world. And essentially it creates a privately funded collection infrastructure for beverage containers, and it makes the producers and the consumers responsible for their packaging waste. And so let's go next slide. Just to show you the process of how the deposit is initiated and then redeemed. So the distributor would collect the deposit when they deliver containers to the retailer. The retailer then collects the deposit from the consumer at the point of purchase. The deposit is refunded to the consumer when the container is returned, and then the deposit is refunded to the retailer when containers are returned to the distributor. So some of the benefits include, well, in states that have implemented bottle bills, the container litter has been reduced somewhere between 70 to 85%, and total litter has also been reduced between 35 and 65%. Non-deposit states have an average bottle recovery rate of around 28%, whereas states with bottle deposit programs have a recovery rate of around 71%. And of course, it reduces overall litter, solid waste, conserves energy and natural resources, reduces climate change, greenhouse gas emissions, and prevents pollution from manufacturing of new containers. And it also creates jobs and new businesses. Yeah, so lots of good benefits to these programs. And now we would like to hear from you all. We've just kind of given you what we've been brainstorming and researching for the past, let's see, 6 months now. And so we'd just like to hear from you all. There's some discussion questions here. If you want to just give us your thoughts, comments, suggestions, we'd love to hear from you and learn from your expertise.
Hey, Ashley, Clint Combs here.
Hi there.
I'd just like to say that I really like everything you're proposing, and I would support it wholeheartedly.
Oh, thanks so much, Clint.
And I'm with Combs Brothers and Las Vegas Livestock down in Las Vegas. For those of you who don't know us, but we work with the hotels and casinos to recycle their food scraps. And we also provide labor on the back docks to handle their recyclables. So this is everything you're talking about is of much interest to me. So thank you.
That's great. Awesome. Well, maybe we can connect sometime one-on-one, you, Barry, and I, and talk about it further.
I would welcome that.
Awesome. Thanks. Looks like we have
Okay.
a hand up from Lena.
Hi, this is Lina. I just had a question about the community solar issue. Just curious if you guys have had experience with this in the past. My recollection, although I didn't specifically work on it, is that issue has crashed and burned in a couple of sessions. So I'm just wondering if you have if you have a champion. I would highlight the distinction between Nevada Energy and the municipalities, because the ones that you're referring to are cooperatives or their own municipal utility. So they're not in Nevada Energy service territory. So it's a lot easier to do those kinds of projects with those types of entities than it would be with Nevada Energy. So I'm just curious if you guys have had made any kind of headway going into this, or is just a little bit more at 30,000 feet?
So Lena, thanks for that question. That is the critical question right there. Honestly, this is more 30,000 feet deal. We know it's crashed and burned. I knew it crashed and burned at least once, and the community solar bill, quote unquote, that got passed in 2019 got morphed into this NV Energy thing where they took it over and they're doing these 3 sites, which is not, in my opinion, community solar. You know, they just kind of stole it. It's not. Yeah, it's very, very limited. Exactly. And the legislators, we have talked with Sarah Peters and Howard Watts about this, and they just are not interested right now. They're burned out. The standing answer is let's wait and see how the bill that passed in 2019 works. And all I see is it's not really related to what we really want to see. So I'm not sure what information we're going to get from the 2019 bill that's going to help us at all in moving forward on real community solar.
Yeah, and if you guys ever, I mean, you know, I've looked at this with my colleagues and have thought about really focusing more on cooperatives and municipal utilities to get the idea going in Nevada, and just sort of avoiding NV Energy right now, because I think that response from the legislators does not surprise me whatsoever. So if you ever want to have that discussion, or you know, we could start doing some outreach to those entities that do have more flexibility or more desire, be happy to chat with you. Thanks.
I would love to talk to you about that. That would be fantastic. We got to start somewhere, you know, and if we start with the municipalities and show how great it is and get some public support for it, you know, that's what we're going to need. We're going to need public support to push these guys in the direction that we all know we need to go. So yeah, I would love to talk to you about that, Lena.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Chris Bell.
Hi, Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Hello. Okay.
Did you have a comment?
Me?
Yeah.
No, just hello, I suppose.
Oh, okay. Hi, Chris. Okay. Chris is one of our team members, one of our main team members, and Tracy's on here too. Tracy Puckett, I think. She's our other major team member. So thanks for being here. All right. Does anybody have any comments on the composting or the landfill bills that we were talking about, or concepts at least?
And we're open to constructive feedback. So if you think any of these are unrealistic, or maybe this isn't a good time in Nevada to pursue something like this, really any suggestions or comments are helpful. So thank you.
This is Lina again. I am very excited about that, representing an entity, a client that works in reducing volume at landfills, and what's going on with similar laws being passed in California, which I'm sure you're probably aware of. I think that's an exciting one to work on. Would love to talk with you guys more about that.
Thank you, Lina. That would be great.
So, Clint Combs here again. I'm driving, so I'm a little distracted, but just wanted to comment about composting. I'm all about responsible and effective higher end use of compostable materials. However, it kind of, we don't, so Combs Brothers Las Vegas Livestock does not do any composting other than like used bedding from our livestock operation. However, there is a company here in Southern Nevada that handling a whole lot of compostable materials and food scraps that they're taking it up to their landfill site in Lincoln County, and I'm afraid it's a greenwashing outfit. They claim to be compost, but I think it's actually being landfilled, compost landfilled. But they have, I know they're processing a whole lot of material as compost, whereas we take that food, the food scraps, and turn it into feed for animals, which is a higher and better use of that material, right? The waste material, food scrap. I'd like to be in this conversation to see how we can make sure that these materials, these waste materials, are being handled correctly and not being greenwashed and not being sent to facilities just for profit sharing.
Thank you, Clint. Those are great considerations to keep in mind, and definitely if someone wants to sponsor this bill, yeah, those are considerations that we need to let them know about. I see another. Okay, Lena, would you like to go?
I think that's Tracy. Is it not Tracy? With
I think it is Tracy. I'm sorry. Yes, Tracy.
Yeah,
hand up.
It is me. I think that I don't want Clint killing himself driving. And I think between Clint and Lina, we have some real advocates for this particular project. So maybe we should plan a meeting just to discuss that, because I think they've got other information that we have not had. And so maybe we can start to form this a little better. But I don't like talking to people on the phone while they're driving. So
I agree.
I wanted to hang up. I worked trauma way too many years. But I would love to have more conversation, and I am in Vegas, so I could help, I don't know, meet in person or talk, whatever. So
Fantastic.
I would just suggest that we get him off the phone.
And
invite him to another meeting.
Okay, that's good.
Right, and Ashley, if you don't mind really quick, so I do apologize. There was confusion on if the meeting was going to start at 2:30 or 3 o'clock. I noticed we'd have about 7 or 8 people join. So maybe if you want to do just a quick little 2-minute overview, talking about the 5 different proposals that you guys are looking at might be helpful for the newcomers. And then Susan also knows that you raised your hand as well.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, we
All
can
right.
just really quick. Okay, everyone, sorry for that confusion. Barry and I are the co-chairs for the Toyabe chapter of the Sierra Club, the legislative committee, and we are presenting our policy proposals for the 2023 legislative session. I'm sure you'll have access to these slides. It just talks a bit about the Sierra Club, our past and present legislative efforts, some goals for today, which is essentially to receive feedback from you all. And then Barry, do you want to just?
Sure.
Yeah.
Very
Okay.
quick on.
Yeah.
Okay, so community solar, that's the main solar bill that we're talking about today. Basically, community solar enables subscribers to get credits on their electricity bill for parts of the energy output of a local solar panel array. Right now, there is no community solar really available in Nevada. So people who can't put solar on their rooftops have no access to using solar panels for their energy. And community solar allows some entity to put up a solar panel, and you could subscribe to that to get your energy. Right now, NV Energy kind of came in and took over the community solar bill from 2019. They hijacked the process basically, and they put up 3 small quote unquote community solar projects, 1 up in northern and 2 in southern Nevada. But really, that's not really what we need. What we need is to allow third-party companies to come in and put up solar arrays and sell solar energy for less money than NV Energy, provides it for. So that's that. So that's good. That's enough for community solar. So next slide. The one after that. Okay. So that's community solar. Then composting. Right now, there is no law in Nevada that is mandating or requiring any kind of composting. And it's really pretty unavailable to people. There's no curbside pickup for composting. There's no pushing to get it done at all. So what we'd like to see is to have a mandate of some amount of composting in each municipality. Mandate it, and a couple ways to do it. One is to mandate a certain amount of solid waste diversion from the landfill, which would include recycling and composting, but as a byproduct, you'd push for more composting. And alternatively, you could just mandate that you got to do composting. I think that might be a harder way to go. And per Cody in your group there, Cody Witt, we also should mandate a guaranteed market for the compost product to keep the composters in business, because they need to sell their compost product after they make it to cities, NDOT, developers, and those kind of people. So that's composting. Okay, and related to composting is reducing the amount of stuff that goes into the landfill. So our proposal is, again, to mandate 25% solid waste diversion from the landfill, with an increasing percentage diverted over time. Right now, there's a suggested 25% waste diversion from the landfill, but there's no teeth to it. It's not mandated. It's just like suggested. And we keep falling short. Something around 20% or even less in Nevada are we diverting from the landfill. And there's just a whole lot of greenhouse gas emissions that go along with that, especially with the food leftover waste that goes into the landfill. So we'd like to see that changed. All right, next slide.
Okay.
Ashley.
Yeah. So the last 2 proposals we have are also regarding waste. First is an extended producer responsibility program. That means a program established in our state that would incentivize the reduction of packaging at its source, so when it's produced, and that would work by charging producers a fee based on the amount of packaging and type of packaging they use. Or, for example, if the packaging on a product can contain 50% post-consumer recycled plastic, then the fee would be lower than, say, a product that used 100% new plastic. And so a producer responsibility organization would collect and manage the funds collected from the fees charged to producers, and then those funds would be used to reduce packaging waste by investing in reuse and recycle infrastructure, and then education on recycling and waste reduction in the state. And so this really targets reducing waste at its source, which is when it's produced for our goods. And then I'm just going to skip over that part. And then our second waste reduction idea is to develop a bottle deposit return program. These are quite popular. About 10 states have these programs. You've probably seen stores with the bottle deposit return machines where you can just pop in your bottles and receive your return deposit back. And so we'd like to see something like that happen in Nevada. It's really effective at reducing container waste. I think the percentage is around, let me see, let me look at my notes, one moment. You see about but somewhere between 75 to 85% of containers are collected. And the way this works is a distributor and retailer collects a refundable deposit around 5 to 10 cents on certain beverage containers. And then that fund of deposit is used to support infrastructure for beverage container collection. And then this essentially makes the producers and the consumers responsible for their packaging waste. And it's been very effective in other states and well received from the public. So that's something we'd like to see happen in Nevada. And that was just a really quick overview of everything we talked about. But we would just like to hear your feedback, any thoughts, any ideas, any suggestions, comments on these ideas before we start meeting with legislators and introducing our ideas to them.
This is Susan Fisher. I'll jump in. I actually worked on the community solar bill on the 2017 one under the umbrella of the Energy Foundation. We had a whole team of lobbyists and advocates doing a number of different bills in this one. The question I have, are you working from that original bill from 2017, or are you reworking it somehow? So that's one question. The second question would be, if you do run the bill this session, find somebody to run it for you, how do you envision having the rates regulated? Would it be sort of PUCN light? So have it pegged to, because you discuss having it lower rates than NV Energy's rates, would you have it regulated where it's just pegged to their pricing, only a certain percentage less? Or how would that be regulated?
So thanks, Susan. I'm ecstatic to meet you and know that you've already worked on this bill in the past. So that it sounds like you might be a really great resource for us if you're interested. I think I can answer the second question better than the first question. So how do we envision the rates being regulated? What I've seen is some states pegging it to the IOU rate, like 10% less. I've seen that in places, but I'm open to suggestions. I don't really know, I really don't. I don't know. I think what we really need are people probably like you that have been through this before and would be more expert in the whole process and give us some advice as to how to move forward. So we haven't had that. We really haven't had a lot of expertise in our group, I have to say. So we have ideas, but we really are reaching out to partners to help us to how do we focus this. And I don't even know if this is even worth bringing up in this session. We have to talk to these legislators again. Do they have any appetite for it at all? But all I know is we got to get here eventually, and we have to start at some point talking about this again. It just got hijacked by NV Energy, and we got to kind of bring it back into reality about where we need to go. So we just need to keep harping on it until we get there, So I would love to talk to you, Susan, about your past experience with this and maybe help guide us if you're willing.
Sure thing. The other one on the bottle bill, so on the illustration, there's a picture of a can also. Are you envisioning the cans would have a deposit too? Beverage cans or just bottles?
That's a good question. You're talking about this illustration, right?
Yes.
Yeah, this is just something from the Container Recycling Institute, just to kind of show how the deposit system works. we haven't really gotten that much into the details of something like this. The bottle deposit idea is something that just came from a meeting we had with one of the Sierra Club's lobbyists. She brought it up, and so it's kind of a fresh idea of ours, and so we don't really have any of the details worked out just quite yet. But we could be interested in the including cans in it.
Just a suggestion, you may want to start with the Retail Association and talk with them. I know
Okay.
they've, their position on this, I think, has shifted over the years, so would be good to engage them sooner rather than later.
Great, thank you.
And I apologize, but I have to hop because I have another meeting. So
Thank you for
thank
being
you for
here.
the presentation.
For your
Appreciate it.
comments.
Thank you.
Now, it looked like Wes Rubio is here and had his hand up.
Hi, yeah, I'm Wes with Washoe County Health District. So a couple of things. As far as solar, I know that Washoe County, we actually, I think, have probably somewhere in the range of 7 to 8 small solar generators going in already. So those kind of projects are already going up here. I don't know exactly what the nuances of them, but just so you guys are aware, like those kind of things are coming forward. I know I have a meeting on another one coming up. And then to kind of capitalize on some of the things, I know when we had spoken before, you know, all residents in the state are all allowed to do composting individually. I think one of the key components here is, so for example, Washoe County, we don't have an active composter any longer, and we also don't have a landfill either. So in order to make a mandate, the state would have to step in and require, like, for example, Lockwood or whatever other places would have to then be required to do that at a state level. The health district here, regardless of my solid waste management plan, unless someone here decides to go build a landfill and do that, which I don't really recommend, the state would have to step in. I can't, my hands are tied. I can't make anybody compost where it's impossible to do so.
How would the state, Wes, how would the state step in? What would they do exactly?
You'd have to change state law.
To do what?
To require landfills to have a compost component, but even then, the composting component still has to meet. And I'm looking to NDEP here, maybe to help, but I believe my regulations and their regulations are mirrored as far as where a composter can and cannot be located. But that's just the state component. You still have planning components with each of the different jurisdictions and residential areas and things like that. So for example, when we discussed it here, the reason why community composting is such a hot topic and yet also a horrible one all at the same time is it can't be approved. You can't have a small composter operating in a neighborhood because it doesn't meet any of the planning requirements and it doesn't meet any of the state requirements. There's trucks, there's turnover, there's all those other things that have to happen. The regulations and the ability to do so collide. Now it can be done if you were in an enclosed warehouse, but you'd have to have a massive warehouse. We're talking Amazon size. So you're, 900 to 1 million square feet of space indoors to be able to do those things. And then you'd have air quality permits, which you're going to have regardless anyways. So those are all just little factors that go into that. But all of those things are components to how to look at if you're going to go and require a composter. I don't disagree. One of the easiest ways would be at a landfill. Most landfills are going to meet most of those requirements. I know that Waste Management had originally had some plans to put in a composting section in the one in Lockwood. I don't know where those still stand. It's out of my jurisdiction, so I don't have a whole lot of play in that realm. But I just wanted to bring those points up to you. So like for places like Washoe County, it's kind of hard for us. I'm at the mercy of where the waste goes. I don't have a place for it in this county where we regulate and make it happen. So there's nuances to that will affect the state much more than some of the locals in some of these things. I wanted to bring up also the bottle bill. That's circled around before. The keys to success here are going to be how it's implemented and who's going to be having to enforce this and look at it. So that's going to be one of the key components. I would encourage you to remember we already have recycling in a lot of these communities. So, like for example, Washoe County and Las Vegas have franchise agreements that include recycling. So does Carson. So we have single container recycling. So that there are components to that where this bottle bill came around. I think it was about 4 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, 2017. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the proposal was, the locals and NDEP would oversee it, and it won't make it out of committee.
If that's the same structure of oversight.
We will oppose it.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And to be quite frankly, it's because the amount of money you're going to need deposited for each can or bottle will be astronomical to what it's actually worth. Because you'll have to fund an entire division of staff.
Yeah.
And cars and computers. And for example, like, half the people on the call have heard me say this before, we're bursting at the seams. So if I have to hire more people, I'm going to need like desks. We're out of space. So all of those little things go into that. So I'm not opposed to the bottle bill, but I am opposed to depending on how it's going to have to be overseen. If the locals have to take it over, or even for that matter, even for NDEP, they don't have the staff either to try and put this type of an oversight into some of these things. So it becomes very difficult for us to be able to have the staff resources to do those things without adversely costing more money to what you're trying to do, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And so how would you see it succeeding, a bottle deposit program succeeding? Do you have any suggestions for research in that direction?
I think
I do. This is Patty.
Moen. Yeah, Patty might have some good ones. I think it'll be very difficult in Clark and Washoe because and Carson because of the existing franchise agreements.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, and I don't never sign those. It's not even my realm.
That's okay. No, it's good to know. It's a good thing to look into. Thank you. Go ahead, Patty.
Okay. Sorry to break in there. So I can't advocate for or against, but I think that, a container deposit does include cans and bottles. And I think, looking at more like the Oregon system where it's not regulated and, by the state, it's an association of the distributors that handles it. And so they actually get to keep more of the funds to run the program. And you have to start at least with 10 cents. You can't even think about starting it with 5 cents, especially because most of the programs that the bottle bill states have been raising it to 10 cents, because 5 cents is just not enough of a incentive for one. And like Wes said, it's not enough money for another. So I would look at Oregon's system and not California. And I guess my other, like Wes was saying, I think with the waste, anything having to do with waste and the franchise agreements, those are super long-term agreements. And they, Republic and Waste Management own landfills. And so they put a lot of money into that infrastructure. And so trying to bring in other, you're not going to have much success trying to bring in any other waste handlers in those counties, you know, so the statewide diversion. I mean, I think getting, you know, making some kind of mandated diversion may be possible, but again, it would be the, you know, how's it going to be enforced? And I think that is, you're going to have some trouble getting that passed. So I had, let me see, the EPR. I guess that was my main comments were, you know, the container deposit, look at Oregon, and then you got to at least start with 10 cents. And then, you know, you're going to run into trouble with franchise agreements. So, but if you know, with a bottle bill, keeping it, you know, inclusive as to the beverage type. That's what a lot of them are struggling with now, because when a lot of them were passed, you know, we didn't have so many, you know, iced tea and, you know, whatever kind of beverages, sports drinks, and even bottled water. And so by making it, you know, more open-ended onto the type of beverages that are included, that's something that other states have been looking at, you know. I mean, I think the Container Deposit Institute or whoever they are have a lot of good, and the who is, I can't remember the other one, but there's one I sent you a link to that has more model legislation, you know, so looking at what the model, because there's actually people working on, you know, kind of a model for federal legislation on container deposits. So just looking to them as to what, you know, the best ideas at this point are, instead of trying to make it, you know, one of the reasons the last one didn't pass was they were trying to have too many exemptions, you know, exempt the casinos from having to opt in, and then you're going to get a lot of fraud. So I think that's a big thing to look out for, is where is the fraud going to come from? You know, because, you know, like people in Nevada have been known to take containers to California. So just something to keep in mind.
Thank you,
that's
Patty.
all I have right
Yeah,
now.
that's helpful. Thank you.
You bet.
Let's see, has Tracy still got her hand up, or she put her hand down?
I'll put mine down.
I put it down, but I do have a question for Wes. Do you think there's any benefit in trying, rather than state law, to try to do county requirements? I mean, Clark, we've got a lot of bottles down here, a lot of cans, a lot of casinos. But do you think that there's any appetite, or do you have any history of what Clark County could or would do?
So that's a great question. You know, that's all gonna honestly depend on the political appetite of each of the health boards. Clark County's health board is big, and getting 11 people to agree on anything usually takes a lot of time. That's why some of Clark County's regulations and fees and things like that for Southern Nevada Health District have taken longer. So they have more challenges in some ways. In some ways, they also have more support because they have far greater population. They also have a lot more ease of transportation, and these are all things that I've talked about with you know, Cody and everybody else about the ability to do certain things in the southern half of the state that we just don't have the same type of infrastructure in the north. So could it work? Absolutely. Would it have to be crafted through the health district and make it work? Yes. And that way it could be put into, like, for example, their specific solid waste management plan. We have one as well. We will be updating ours in accordance with the state one. Once the state's gets completed, then we'll work on getting ours back in line. And so same kind of thing. We've been asked about it here in the north. My problem is I have some support and some not. So I can beat my head against one wall or another. It just depends on which wall I decide to beat my head against, or get squished in between. And quite frankly, that's kind of the way it feels right now up here, because I don't have anywhere to take it. I can mandate recycling all day long. There's nowhere for it to go but the landfill right now. So we have logistical issues. And so I think if you move it forward, my biggest suggestion is you almost have to look at the state in halves or in thirds even, between your actual rural communities that don't have the capabilities and the places to put it, your areas like Reno and Carson that have some areas to put it, but not a whole lot of areas to put it. And then your places like Southern Nevada that have a little bit of a better population base and a little bit better transportation avenues to make those things work. I think that, to me, that would be the most successful approach. I think it can work in a number of different ways, but just off the top of my head, that's the way I would do it.
Thank you.
I saw another hand up. I think, was it Kendra?
It was Kendra,
Yeah.
but put your hand down.
I'm sorry. I just had to jump in just to clarify Wes's comments, only because I'm hearing a lot of feedback again lately from people who are saying we're putting recycling in the landfill. We're not putting any recycling in the landfill. And organics that get there we do landfill gas to energy. So just throwing that out there for anybody who picked up on that piece. We're not doing that.
I wasn't suggesting that you guys are doing it. I'm really talking about the whole rest of the community for recycling stuff. That's why I try and keep there's a difference between single stream and the other mandated or the other recyclers that we have, quote unquote recyclers.
Got you. Thank you, Wes.
Okay, it looks like Phoebe has her hand up.
Yeah,
Phoebe,
I've just,
hand
yeah, I had a thought on the organics bit, not really a comment or anything on if it should be pursued or not, because I have a conflict of interest there, but just a suggestion on your choice of language in regard to reducing methane. Kendra did point out that we do methane gas to energy at Lockwood Landfill, and larger facilities like that are required to manage methane gas. And to Clinton's point, which is a really good point, it's really important to avoid the potential for greenwashing. So if you choose to pursue something with compost, my suggestion is simply that you should think about the language of methane gas a little bit differently and focus more on the other benefits of composting, like soil health, water retention, and the environmental benefits in that regard for, local at-home type composting or smaller outfits. My second comment is on community solar, and I actually worked for a community solar company based out of Denver. And that company went bankrupt because they were doing some shady stuff, frankly. They were over-promising and under-delivering. And so the thought that a private company can offer community solar at a lower price than the utility can offer it is, in my experience, pretty naive and something that I really wanted to believe in for a long time, but then was unfortunately proven wrong when I was working for a company that I didn't feel was being ethical. So I just wanted to let you know that and cue you into that. So I guess, ruin your dreams of being hopeful about it a little bit like mine were.
Great, Phoebe. I think there are some companies, though. I know there are some companies in the country that are not bankrupt that are doing community solar. So maybe there's good ones and bad ones, I would assume.
That's true. And it really just depends on how it's set up. So, I mean, that company worked on a lot of different projects, and the most successful ones were when it was with a municipal utility, where those rates could be controlled a bit more, and you didn't have, kind of like this profit aspect of like a NV Energy. That was more successful. And it was also more successful when it was set up as a lease for a rooftop space, where it could be distributed solar still and not like one large solar array. So there's a lot of different formats that can be used, but not all of them are beneficial to the consumer. That's my only point.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that's true. It's just that right now in Nevada, I don't believe there's any ability to put any of this stuff up. Like you can't come in and sell energy unless you're Envy Energy. I don't believe you can sell energy to customers. So I think we need to change that. That's the main thing. And totally open to getting the language right. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, that's a whole other beast, right? We went through the whole situation, I believe, in the last election cycle, or the one before that, where we talked about opening up, the utility company for more companies to compete, and that was essentially shot down. And I have a lot of thoughts on that. But
would you be interested in, or would you be available for us to contact you and to talk more about this? Because I'd love to hear your insights.
Yeah, definitely. I'll throw my email address in the chat, and then we can have a separate conversation.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Phoebe.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Wes.
Yes.
I just had a quick follow-up. One, to kind of also make sure I was balancing between some of the waste management stuff. Whatever proposals come in for recycling, I think needs to be able to be balanced and with checks and balances for some of the smaller operators that are also equal to what we require of the big operators. So the same rules need to apply to both, because it still needs to be a fair and even marketplace for those operators to be able to be out there. We shouldn't hammer, for example, Waste Management and Republic just because they're huge. I say huge, and I understand there's bigger ones out there. But I have just as many issues with the little, or more with some of the other little ones, because they don't feel like the rules need to apply. So I think those are just some other things. And to Phoebe's point, I guess my big question is, if we're going to go towards the realm of community solar, why not put in something in regulation that challenges all of the city planning and everything, that to have, any type of commercial building have to dedicate X amount of rooftop area to solar. I mean, that way we're also not putting it on the ground and taking up areas that way. To me, that's the environmentalist side of me. I'm not a builder. I don't know how that works with building codes. I don't know what has to happen with that. That's just my personal opinion. So
We would agree with that. And we also would like to make them all take their parking lots and cover them with solar panels, which creates shade for the cars and solar. That'd be awesome.
Chris, you have something?
Yeah, I have a question, which would be good to get feedback on, is that a lot of waste management issues that we might be considering running with. The first step would be doing a statewide audit of waste and where it goes and what it's composed of and how it's managed and and just the data, a data collection. And I think maybe that might be the lowest hanging fruit and maybe the least, get the least pushback from legislators. And as a first step into understanding the lay of the land for the whole state in terms of waste management, could you comment to that idea of having just a legislation that would ask for an audit, a waste audit for the state?
Here, I can jump in here really quick with Kayla on with NDEP. So Chris, that is a wonderful idea and something that we've been trying to see how feasible it is. A statewide waste audit would be phenomenal. It is just very pricey. So we're trying to see if there's any grant availabilities out there. And yeah, Wes, I see that you have a note in there. There have been a couple smaller waste audits done. I think one was done in Washoe County in 2017. Don't quote me on that. But they're very helpful. So you're right, having one more statewide to kind of see how do our rurals differ from our urban areas, or just having really that data. Problem is, it is just very expensive. So if there's a way to kind of offset that cost, if you decide you want to put that into every X years, a statewide waste audit has to be completed, how are we going to offset that cost?
Great, thank you. Are we talking 10 million, 20 million, 1 million?
Great question. We've actually been trying to find that out ourselves. From what we've been hearing from other states, is roughly between $300,000 and $500,000 for one statewide waste audit. Now, this was based off the state of Washington, but it really depends on how many materials you want to really look at. They were looking at around 148 different material types. Then how many facilities you want to look at. You look at transfer stations, residential, drop off. So it really just kind of factors into how detailed do you want that waste audit to be. But right now it's rough ballpark between 300,000 and 500,000 is what I've been seeing. Again, that's just from state of Washington.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other comments? Well, it looks like we've come to the end of our comment section. Unless anybody has another comment, we so appreciate you guys feeding back, listening to us and feeding back, and we will be in contact with the people that said they would like to have more conversation with us. We thank you in advance for that. That's fantastic.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. And our emails are up there on the screen. So if you would like to reach out to us with any additional comments or questions, please write our emails down and reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you.
And I assume I can get email addresses from Kayla of various people that said they'd be willing to talk to us, right?
Absolutely. Yes. And
Okay,
so
great.
immediately after this, I'll be uploading this video onto YouTube. So if you guys want to rewatch or share with anyone who is also interested, just see what you guys are proposing, you'll be able to share that as well. Okay.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you, Kayla, too. Thank you for coordinating this whole thing.
Oh, yeah,
And
my
Alexandra,
pleasure.
too. Thank you, Alexandra Sabo.
Oh, you're welcome. And my apologies for the miscommunication on the time. I told Kayla, I was like, oh, I told them they'd have some time at 2:30 to get ready, and then we kind of threw you in. So good job today.
Yeah, it's good practice. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.